Most people say they want to make an impact, but very few people talk about what it actually costs. And that's really what this platform is about. From the outside, impact looks exciting. It looks meaningful. It looks like progress. But what you don't see are the moments behind it. Impact collided with necessity. Impact isn't just about what you build. It's about what you're willing to give up. Most people say they want to make an impact, but very few people talk about what it actually costs. And that's really what this platform is about. From the outside, impact looks exciting. It looks meaningful. It looks like progress. But what you don't see are the moments behind it. From the outside, you see progress. You see folks getting stuff done. You see lives being impacted and changed. And let's face it, it all looks pretty darn good. From what I've seen, personally, sometimes it can be an illusion. And other times, it's real. For example, you know how you meet that person and they look like they have it all together and they're literally saving the world? And then you look under the covers and they are literally holding everything together by not even a rubber band. Yeah, those people exist and they're being seen as making impact. What they haven't told you is that there literally is one rubber band that's about to snap any moment. And they're praying harder than you can see that it doesn't snap in front of everybody else. The late nights where you're still working and you're wondering if any of this is going to actually work. The decisions where you say no to something or to someone that really matters to you. Let me tell you a little story. Our first foray into business was because it wasn't initially because we wanted to make impact. It was because we wanted freedom and security from both having corporate jobs, honestly. And so we decided to look at a business broker sheet and buy a business. Well, it so happened that at the time we had just had our first son. And he was, I believe, 14 months. So we looked on this list and guess what popped up? A preschool. Well, that seemed divinely inspired. And so we decided to go with the preschool. Truth of the matter is, we were, 30s, early 30s, and had no idea how to begin, start, run, or end running a preschool. But, youth is what it is, and we decided to jump in and figure it out. In so doing, we realized very quickly that this was an impactful thing to do. Dealing with people's children and being responsible for their well-being was not for the faint of heart and certainly was extremely impactful. So when we started to go out the gate, I asked myself the question, of all the businesses we could choose, is this really the one that's worth it to do right now? A lot of liability came with that. But in the same breath, I realized that I had education in my DNA. My mother had been a teacher for a very long time, and that there would be something fulfilling about actually being able to impact young children, underserved children, and offer them something better. This is going to make for a good episode because I'm having to walk all the way back to the first time I actually did impactful work. And I will come back to that story, but I think this one is most relevant because I did not start off trying to do impactful work, but ended up doing impactful work for a very long time. So let's start here. My husband got laid off from his job. I was still working. We were, I think, like early 30s, had just had our first son. That was kind of not cool because all of a sudden we had one income. What were we to do? So we decided in that moment that we would not allow our entire family to ever be dependent fully on corporate America again. As a result, we chose to buy a business. We had no clue what business we were buying, but we were going to buy a business. We went to a business broker, and he gave us a list of businesses. As we went through the list, we saw a preschool. Well, what do you know? Kind of seemed divinely inspired that we should go with that one, since we had a 14-month-old in the house. What better scenario than to be able to care for our own child in our business? We went along and did the analysis. We actually spent probably about 6 months vetting the revenue and doing all the calculations and the numbers to make sure it made sense. We even took a home equity line of credit out on our home because we didn't have this boatload of cash sitting in the house or in our bank accounts for that matter. Heck, we had $20,000. And so we chose to buy the business. At this point, now investing $150,000 into purchasing it. In that moment, there was something unique that we noticed as we were sitting in that building and vetting the revenue. Every day after work, I would come in from New York City and meet my now deceased husband, and we would sit together and go through the numbers and vet that what the person who was selling the business to us was telling us was actually what it was. What we noticed in that moment was that there were a lot of underserved young children in this daycare, preschool, and they were getting really poor care, really unfairly, right? And so their parents were bringing them in and paying a nominal fee, and as a result, they were getting extremely poor care. And that pricked our hearts in a different way than what our original goal was. And so we decided that should we purchase this business, we would change the level of service and care that these underserved children were getting because they were just as deserving of proper care as anybody else. Fast forward, we bought the business and decided we would do that. But we had to question whether or not it would be worth it because we weren't sure that the business model would allow us to provide the level of care we needed at the right price point, given the area we were in at the time. It was an area that was being gentrified, but it was not quite there. And so you had this tension between how much you could charge and whether or not you could be profitable. But under it all, our guiding light became, because of how we saw those little kids being treated from sitting there to analyze the business, that it would not just be a great thing to have our son in our preschool, but that it would be great to impact the lives of all of those young children who deserved better care and education in preparation for kindergarten. So we made the trade-off. $150,000 line of credit when I think we're maybe 2 or 3 years into our mortgage, or sit on the sidelines. We chose to get in. What did the moment feel like? Super scary. A tad crazy. And it felt like we were jumping off the bridge and we had no safety net, but what the heck? The little kids, at a minimum, would be treated better and we would find our way. And off we went. And when I say cost, I don't just mean money. I mean jitters. We were nervous. We were a young family, now with a newborn, only one income, and a hope and a prayer that what we were investing in would make enough money to just pay back the line of credit and then hopefully make a profit one day. Our goal was 3 years to pay back the line of credit. I have to say, every day that I got on the train and went to New York City, leaving my husband, now deceased husband, and my oldest son at our new business was scary. I felt at that point, I knew I had to make sure nothing went wrong with my job, because if I was out of a job too, I can't say that on this platform, right? And so I'm not just talking about money at this point. I'm talking about time, from the perspective of literally working an 8-hour day, doing a almost 3-hour train ride, and then coming back to the preschool after work and working through the numbers and going through and making sure we were staying on track. I'm talking about a lot less parties that we were going to when our friends were in their early 30s. I'm talking about if maybe there were some other opportunities on that business broker list that might be a lot less risky. I'm talking about learning to talk to parents and truly understanding at that moment, 22 years ago, that we would need to make sure everything was perfect because we were talking about people's children. I didn't know that's where we were going, but now we were on the road, so it didn't matter. Heck, we were on the road already. And there were people's children in our preschool. What people don't talk about enough is how much you sometimes can second guess yourself, especially early on in your impact journey. So for us, impact collided with necessity. The necessity to support our family, the necessity to have control over our finances, and really the necessity to kind of determine what our own destiny would be. So when people talk about or don't talk enough about the cost, I think one of the things that they really miss is that you may intend to have some, maybe a tad bit of impact, but if your destiny is really to go have real impact, you can't imagine how big it's going to be until you're on the road. And when you're on the road, it becomes interesting, right? Because you kind of like the road. You don't want to get off the road. You now understand what the stakes are to others and their lives. And if your heart is in the right place, you want that to matter. So you keep going. What they don't tell you is you're as scared, you're more scared than some of the people who are depending on you. That's real talk. When has it not felt good for you? Well, scared doesn't usually feel good. Scared is scared, right? And so you take your cues from the fact that it feels good for other people. And I remember in that first year, us being able to keep prices relatively contained, but have parents come in and say, oh my gosh, thank you for giving our kids so much better care. We feel like it's what they deserve. That was what felt good. Under the covers, making ends meet and tightening our family budget and not going on vacations or going to New York City to hang out was not the part of the story that they saw. But it was worth it because we started to feel the result of impact very quickly. And that fueled us in a way that made the sacrifices that we had to make in our family life, in our family finances, feel like it was worth it because we were literally helping young, vulnerable children get what they deserved. If you're building something or you're trying to create change, understanding the cost helps you stay grounded. I wish I had a platform that told me a quarter of what I'm telling you now. Doesn't mean that it would have changed the trajectory of what I would have done, but at least I would have been a little bit more informed. Because let's face it, if your heart is in impact work, you're going to do it anyway. But it does help to know that it's going to be a bumpy ride. And it was a bumpy ride because the lady we bought from was no walk in the park. She made it difficult all along the way because she started to see very quickly that our intentions were to not just make a fast dollar like she was making. It was to change the level of care. And I think she thought there was only one way to be profitable. But as she saw us realize, and so let me just fast forward and rewind and say, we had an agreement that the person who we purchased from would stay on in a consulting capacity for about 6 months before, disappearing into the sunset because, you kind of want credibility to stay constant and then kind of introduce who the new owners are, especially where childcare is concerned. So that was the agreement. We made changes quickly. Service started to appreciate pretty close to immediately because we were just besides ourselves that this could even be happening, right? And she started to see that there may be more than one revenue model, and there actually could be a revenue model that provide great care and eventually became profitable. So that became a sticking point real quick because I think she may have thought to herself, maybe I undersold the cost. The cost that I sold the business for might not have been enough. And so she became an obstacle along the way. Which somebody would have told me that because now we had to manage her on top of everything else. And we had to effectively manage her out without a hit to our credibility. That was a huge surprise for us. The last thing we thought we would have to worry about is managing the exiting owner who has her money, our line of credit money from our mortgage in her bank account and is being paid a consulting fee, who was never ever there anyway and only came to collect money on maybe Fridays or Mondays whenever the parents paid. The last thing we thought was we would now have to start managing her. But greed is a thing. And so, once she figured out that we could change the model and we started to do that effectively and that parents were willing to pay slightly more and appreciated the increased level of care, she became an obstacle. Humongous surprise. Now we had to manage her out and literally tell her, it's okay, you don't have to come to work. We got this. And now she wanted to come to work because she wanted to see what was happening. You will never believe. Next thing we knew, she was opening another preschool. So would my decision have been different if I understood the cost earlier? No. And the reason why is because I realized, and when I actually now reflect on more of my life, I have a heart for impact. And it became clear very quickly that the needs of the young children beyond our son was paramount, and that we would have to find a way to make it work. So there was now this supernatural driving force, right, that made me want to make a difference in these kids' lives right here and right now. I would have to figure out a way to do that. Don't underestimate the power of planning. Don't shortchange planning. And fall in love with math. Listen, a lot of people think it's cool even to say, I'm not really a math person. I can predictably say that one of the main reasons we ended up being successful was because we spent tons of time modeling in spreadsheets, researching, understanding the market, and doing the numbers, and then sticking as closely as we could to the numbers. So if you're doing impact, yes, it's hard work, but I would understand that hard work can also be math work. And the two actually probably exist together very well. In my case, it did. So now when you're working with numbers, right? As I said, numbers were a key part of what made us successful. And you can predict, to a reasonable and sometimes extremely good degree how things are going to go from that perspective. But, there may be times where other unexpected things show up. And yeah, you may even plan buffers into your budgeting, but there are things that come up, right? And you get to a point where sacrifices then have to be made, right? Because you've done it well enough, you've tuned it well enough, and you can predict to some certainty that X, Y, and Z will happen. But for us, for instance, we were very specific about the fact that we would pay X amount back on our loan each month so that we could actually put back our home, return our home equity line of credit money in 3 years. What did that mean? $50,000 a year. What did that equal? Divide that by 12 every month. So what that meant is we weren't getting that money into our bank account to, go to the movies or to, a vacation. We were paying back the home equity line of credit. So we therefore had to scale down our personal financial budget to operate off of my one income, because the priority at that point was whatever was coming back from the business, and the discipline associated with that was to pay off the line of credit. It was non-negotiable. And so, yes, that meant no new clothes. God forbid. If you know me, you know I love clothes. So that was a 3-year sacrifice. Very little vacationing. Fortunately, our son was still young, so, we could do really super local things, and that was fine. And that meant that, a lot of our friends who were double income earners, with relatively decent careers, could do more than we could do. So we did a lot more barbecues at the house. It actually turned out to be a lot of fun. And yeah, we definitely would feel away. We would feel a little jealous sometimes that there were certain things, we would want to do at that point. But the funny part is, I bet when they watched this, most of them did not know that that was the case. But internally, in our household, we definitely had those conversations about, man, we would love to go to Jamaica. A whole bunch of people are going to Jamaica, or we would love to go on this cruise around the city where everybody's going. A lot of time we could blame it on the business and working late, because we really were, but we also just didn't have the money to do it at that point. And yes, there was probably a degree of jealousy about the fact that we had made this impactful choice that definitely limited our ability to do the cool things in New York City that people in their early 30s do. But that was the pill we had to swallow. That definitely caused us from time to time to question our decision, because I can't say that the trajectory just went like this and we just started earning money and it just kept going like this. We came to find out a lot of things that we hadn't budgeted for needed to be paid for. We had to get a new playground, and once you start increasing quality, people want everything to be increased in quality, right? They're not patient anymore. People who came after didn't know the story of what had happened before and just expected a certain level. And so more investment was required. So yeah, we just had to continue to make sacrifices and, adjust our personal budgeting and, every now and then question, man, did we bite off a lot more than we could chew? Because, for real, to start, this ain't an easy business anyway. Add all of those components on top of it. Yeah, we definitely questioned it in those first 3 years, because it wasn't by any stretch of the imagination a straight road or an upward trajectory. It was every now and then a rubber band and a lot of prayers and just, partnering and working it out. I would tell myself to keep going every time I looked at the faces of the kids when we came in, and every time we walked in and looked at the staff. Because now not only were the kids dependent on us to provide a nurturing environment, the staff were dependent upon us to keep them employed. And they were really worried when we first purchased the business, because they weren't sure if they would still have a job. And if you ever go through the experience of purchasing a business where people are hired and they don't know what's going to happen, it's scary. And so for them to feel safety and security in us, said, keep going. To walk in and see the kids actually in a much better environment and thriving, said, keep going. And to see every now and then, a light kind of poke through that said, yeah, you're going in the right direction. Might be a little bumpy, but you're moving in the right direction. To hear feedback from the parents said, keep going. And, I think just trust in the fact that we were disciplined enough to stay the course, right? Because one of the things that I believe is important when you're making impact is discipline. There's no way around it, right? And if you tell yourself again that I'm a heart person, I'm an impact maker, and you exempt yourself from discipline, I'm not sure how far you're going to go. That's real talk if you want the truthful answer. So one of the things that also said keep going was the discipline to stay the course of what the plan was and to see it brick by brick start to be enacted little by little. So at that point, my faith was still a work in progress, right? Because I had gone through a really crazy experience as a young child, as a refugee in a civil war. And my faith was definitely on, 15 out of 10 at that point. And I think after I got through that experience and got a little bit of success, that yes, I was going to church, and yes, I was definitely faithful, but I don't know if I was anchoring in my faith at that point enough. That's the other thing I would say to do maybe better than me at that point, is anchoring in your faith. So I was faithful. I was going to church and doing all of that, but I don't know that I was as anchored as I was before or that I am now. And I think that would have probably helped me with some of the stress, because I would have gotten confirmation that, yeah, you're going in the right direction, because in fact we were. Yeah, we have faith in each other, right? If you are going to partner, right? So I partnered with my husband on this journey. We have faith in each other. We have faith in our capabilities. We have faith in the fact that we were complementary in nature. We have faith in the fact that what he missed, I would pick up and catch, and we would be able to fix it together. And we had faith in the fact that if we stayed the course and worked together, that we could truly have impact. And that's rare. I don't recommend people partnering with everybody under the sun, but if you are going to partner, it's important for you to have faith in your partner. Obviously not above God, but that faith in each other's capabilities and complementary statuses, and each one person having the other's back, is really, really important, because with this sort of journey, it would have probably been really hard to do individually. And it would have been hard as a family for the both of us, obviously, to be unemployed. So, yeah. What surprised me about the process? It ain't for the faint of heart. Picture it, right? Your mortgage has basically gone up. Your exposure has gone up. You can only control pricing and move it but so much as you diversify your clientele. You got to make sure you keep that job, the one job you have. That's what surprised me about the process. I didn't know all that was coming. And when you're in it, you now have to adjust and move and pivot and make sure that it all somehow comes together, and that parents still have trust in you as you're building. You're literally flying the plane, while putting the wheels on. If you're building something or you're trying to create change, understanding the costs helps you stay grounded. I wish I had a platform that told me a quarter of what I'm telling you now. Doesn't mean that it would have changed the trajectory of what I would have done, but at least I would have been a little bit more informed. Because let's face it, if your heart is in impact work, you're going to do it anyway. But it does help to know that it's going to be a bumpy ride. Impact isn't just about what you build. It's about what you're willing to give up to build it. Let's get into it. Thanks for listening to The Cost of Impact. If this conversation resonated with you, share it with someone who's building something meaningful in their own way. Until next time, keep building what matters. All right, my dear, we'll talk soon. Yes, he's got to be in here.
Really, really nice.
This is the place. He's got to be in here. And it's open. My door's open. It was so much fun. We decided to do it again. Are you ready? Let's go. Let me see if I can do this still.
Breaking the whole